All right. So tonight, I'm excited to announce or welcome Eddie G from Alabama. Eddie G is going to share with us, and I don't think I made you a co-host, so let me do that right now. Unmute you. Welcome, Eddie.
Thank you. I'm Eddie G, and I am an alcoholic. And I'd like to thank Devin and Tiffany for inviting me to be here tonight. I'm from Alabama. I'm a redneck drinker, and but I've had a lot of travel experience, and I have a sponsor in this program that has a sponsor that has a sponsor, and my great grand sponsor. He passed away Monday and had helped a whole lot of people, and I'm really grateful for him. And he'll surely be missed in this wonderful program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I sponsor guys, and they sponsor guys, and but I want to share with you, just as the book says, what happened to me, what I was like, and what I'm like today. I like what how the book describes what I'm supposed to do, so I'm going to try to do it like this. But on page 28, it's talking about the stories in the back. But it says that we give clear-cut directions. It says are given, showing how we recovered. These are followed by 42 personal experiences, each individual in the personal stories. But tonight, I'm telling my personal story in person, describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. These give a fair cross-section of our membership and a clear-cut idea of what has actually happened in their lives. And I was 48 years old when I got sober. I started drinking at 11 years old. Was the first time I can remember being drunk. Actually, I had sipped beer and stuff when I was just a kid. My mom and dad, we're Southern people. My mom sang. My dad played the guitar. My brothers played guitars. And they'd get together and drink. And I always enjoyed watching I can remember when I was a kid, I'd watch everybody would gang around and start drinking. And after a while, they'd be up dancing and laughing and just having the best time. You could see what the alcohol did. You could see the change that it made in them. And that sort of sparked me. So the first time that I was away, and I was in the Boy Scouts, we went to Eglin Air Force Base to see the Thunderbirds fly. I was raised in Birmingham, Alabama. And, well, we moved around a lot, but I'll get into that in a minute. But we went down there, and they put us up in this barracks. And in the barracks, they had it looked like a Coca-Cola machine, but it was a beer machine. And beer was like a nickel or a dime. It was like super cheap, and we had a little money, so we started drinking beer. And I remember it was in a brown can, and it was Slits. Now, I don't know if anybody on here is old enough to remember Slits or not. But if they are and they ever drank it, they'll tell you that, boy, what a hangover. The thing I remember about my first drunk is the next morning I woke up and I had a horrible hangover, headache just killing me, and I had peed all over myself. And I knew that was going to be that. I wasn't doing that no more. That was just horrible. I didn't, man. And, but, if people on here is like me, then they know. And when I say people on here like me, one thing I was taught early on, I want to go ahead and say this, is I was taught early on to look for similarities. Somehow as alcoholics, we have a pattern that we always look at how I'm a little bit different than everybody else. I hadn't done that yet, or I'm not that bad. So they taught me early on to look for similarities. And when somebody's sharing. And if you look for similarities, you'll probably find them. You'll find some things that you can relate to. But anyhow, so but the next time that I was around older guys, and that's who I usually hung out with, was guys that were older than me, and they had something to drink, I drank. Now, I did learn once I was in the program that one of the things was not fitting in, and I had never thought about that about myself at all. But when I was little, my mom, God rest her soul, she loved to find a, we would be riding through neighborhoods and she'd see an empty house and she'd go, oh my, that's such a nice house. And we'd go calling up and they would go moving into it. You know, we'd usually rent it. We were renters. My parents were really poor. And so we didn't own houses. We rented houses. And my mom, she'd find different houses in different neighborhoods. I went to every school there was around. And when, you know, you're a new kid in school, and we'd move sometimes 2-3 times in 1 year. And when you're the new kid in school, a lot of times kids are mean, and I felt like an outsider. I never really seen that until I got into recovery, how that had affected me. But I know that it affected me because as I got older, I always loved being around people and having friends. Now, I was only about 13 or 14 years old when that I realized that I didn't like beer. Beer just sort of bloated me like or whatever. And I, you know, I got around some guys one time drinking tequila when I was about 13. And I liked that. I got to where I wanted to go quick. But, you know, being raised in Alabama, there's a lot of rednecks. And these guys that bought the tequila were like best friends, right? And they get to drinking tequila, and the next thing you know, they're in a knockdown, drag-out fight. They beat the heck out of each other. It was crazy, but I loved it. And so, you know, and then the next time that I drank was like Seagram 7 and 7. I liked that. So I had found that liquor would get me not bloated, and I got that buzz I was looking for. Because from the time I drank that beer in that barracks, one thing that I learned to these times was I didn't drink just to taste it like a Coca-Cola. So I drank for the effect. I started out drinking for the effect right away. And, you know, I was, when I was 11 and drank that first beer, that was in 1969. So I came up during the 70s. So it was just a party life. And when I grew my hair out long and started going to different schools and I was drinking and partying, you know, I learned that I fit in. I was the new cool guy that come to the school. So I wasn't no longer an outsider at the schools. And that became a way of life. I've looked at that in recovery, you know. It seems to me it's like the song on Cheers, you know. We want to go somewhere where everybody knows our name. You know, I want to fit in. And so my drinking and alcoholism was a way of life. When I'd go to a bar, the bartender knew what I drank. People in there knew my name. I shot pool. I played darts. This went on for, like I said, I was 48 years old when I got sober. Even though I swore off so many times. A guy I sponsored one time, because I'm going to get into when I got sober. My sobriety date is February 23rd, 2007. And when I got sober, you know, since the time that I got sober, that's the only sobriety chip I picked up. And, you know, so not relapsing, you know, since I got here, it's been a good thing. But one of the guys I sponsored, he shared one time when he told his story, and he said, you know, I haven't relapsed since I got here, but I've relapsed so many times before I got here. So many times I swore off. And I'm sure that there's people that relate to this, because we swear off, meaning it with all of our heart. I mean, when my son was born in 1982, that was it. I'd already had 2 DUIs, and I just wasn't going to drink like that. I wasn't going to live like that no more. And, you know, and I did. I quit for a brief period of time. But then restless, irritable, discontent, boredom would always set in. And, you know, with me, it's not when I quit drinking. I can quit drinking, but after I'm quit for a while is when the wheels start coming off. You know, I need something to settle me down, or I need something to go out and have a good time. I need to blow off the steam. You know, I can remember getting off of work and going and getting that first drink and taking that drink, and it'd be like, yeah, you know, finally. And that's that sense of ease and comfort that the book describes from that drink, from the essential effect produced by that drink. And that just went on and on and on. And you know, I mean, I 3 marriages, countless jobs. I mean, I relapsed so many times it wasn't even funny. And so when I got here, you know, as far as I was beat, is what I'm trying to say. I got arrested, and now also during that time, before my son was born, I got into a traveling sales company when I was like 17 years old, and we traveled all over the United States, and we went to Hawaii during the winter, and we would sell over in the islands. I've been to every island except for Nahua. And here I was just turned 18 years old when we went through the first time. Now I'm an 18-year-old, got kicked out of school when I was in the 8th grade, Alabama boy, living in Hawaii. At that time, you could drink in the bars at 18. So now I'm going in the bars. I mean, I'm 18. I'm living in Hawaii. I'm an old Alabama boy. You know, I had arrived. Man, it was just great. And this company, we ended up going to Vail and Aspen, Steamboat Springs. I got to learn how to ski. I mean, all kinds of cool stuff. So, you know, it was just a wonderful thing. And learning how to, in sales, you know, I found a career that I was able to make a decent living. And that was a big thing, coming from blue-collar family that never had nothing to actually working into being able to have things, you know. But anyway, it sure helped my drinking because I was able to drink top shelf, you know. But by the time that I got here, I ended up in jail, and I was back in Alabama. I'd lived in California for a long time, and went through divorce with my wife and moved back to Alabama, and got thrown in jail. I was released to a halfway house, and when I got released to that halfway house, it was funny. You know, the guy that owned the halfway house, when he came in, he asked me, he says, "Eddie, is drinking and everything, is that your only problem you got?" I looked at him, well, yeah, it is. And I'm going to be okay this time. I'd been in jail for, I call jail my rehab. I'd been there for a little over 30 days. That was my rehab. And I went to another jail before that they decided to charge me. So I was there for 3 days. So that was my detox. And, you know, so, you know, everybody that's in real nice rehab places, that's cool, because my rehab wasn't real nice. It was a 8th floor, 12 cell D block at Jefferson County Jail in Birmingham. But they released me out of there to a halfway house. And, you know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, you hear sometimes, and then it got worse. Well, when I went to the halfway house, then it got worse. I didn't go to a real nice recovery place. It was a 3-bedroom house, and down in the bottom, it's 500 block West End, bad part of Birmingham. I mean, there was guys selling crack out on the corner. I mean, it was a bad neighborhood. They had 3 recovery houses in this neighborhood. Can you imagine that? And it was a 3-bedroom house, and there was 8 of us that lived in it with 1 bathroom. That was my recovery house. So yeah, it got worse. And the guy that owned it, you know, he asked me, he says, "Drinking your only problem?" I said, "Oh yeah, yeah. And I've been praying about it. I think it will be okay this time." He says, "Really?" I said, "Well, yeah, I do. You know, I mean, I got these jail charges on me, but you know, I'm going to try to see what I can do to work through those." And, you know, he says, "Well, you seem pretty smart." I said, "Well, yeah, I've always done pretty good, you know." And he says, "Well, you seem pretty intelligent." I said, "Well, yeah, I've owned my own houses, and, you know, I've been in business and everything. Yeah, I've done real well." He says, you're really intelligent." He said, Well, let me ask you a question. He says, how old was you the last time you had a curfew? I looked at him like, I don't know, man, probably 12 years old or something. He says, how old are you now? I said, well, I'm 48. He said, well, guess what? You're so intelligent, you're 48 years old, and you got a curfew. You'll be at this house at 10 o'clock at night, and you'll go to 3 meetings here a week, or you're going back to jail. That's how intelligent you are. Who the heck is this guy? Talk to me like that. He didn't even know who I was. Man, all I knew was as soon as I could, I was getting out of that house. He had no right to talk to me like that. And he told me, he said, there's a blue book in there. He says, if you get that book, you might find out that drinking is not even your problem. He says, you're your problem. And so anyway, well, you know, time went on a couple of days here and there, and they had some meetings there. And when they had the meetings, what happened for me is these guys was coming in, and they were sharing. And, you know, they were sharing about what had happened with them. And this says that, well, the book talks about, you know, when we're really beat, you know, when we're at that place that we're beat. And I knew I was beat. I needed a new way to live. And they kept talking about that, you know, they kept talking about sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I was, man, I knew I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And these guys started coming in the house, and they started sharing, and they were telling their story, and they had lived like I had lived. They had partied like I had partied. They had drank like I had drank. And they had long sobriety, some of them. I mean, 2, 3 years, some of them 10 years. The guy that owned the house, he had 15 years sober at that time. And they were happy about it. So I really didn't know what it was they had, but I knew that I wanted some of it. And so they started, you know, I started reading that book he told me to read. And I started looking at character defects and stuff like that in there. And I started seeing myself in that book more and more. And but anyway, I got out on a Friday now. And on Monday, I went and got a job. And on Tuesday, the job I got actually picked me up. And I started going out and working. And so, I mean, I started making money right away. Well, the rent at the halfway house was $75 a week. And about 2 weeks' time, we're down on the Big Warrior River. And now I'm released there by a program called Task. I had to go to the Task. They called my color. I had to call this number. And they'd say what color was up. And I had like 3 colors to begin with. I was a pretty risky guy, I guess they thought. And so anyway, I was peeing like 2, 3 times a week for them. And so all I knew was they told me that I had to live there because none of my family, I didn't have a lot of family left, but none of my family would let me come stay with them. And I didn't have no place to go out of jail. So this halfway house, that's what they did. That's how you could get out of jail. You had to have a place to go before you could have a bond. Somebody had to say, yes, he can live here. So, so I thought that was the only thing, is I just need a place to live. So I'd been working about 2 weeks, and we were down on the Big Warrior River in Birmingham now. Never been here. It's a beautiful, big, beautiful river. And this little fish camp, like, they had cabins, and they had one empty. And I mean, man, it was sitting right there on the river. You walk out the porch and river's right there. What a beautiful place. It's only $300 a month. And Eddie had $300 a month. So I went ahead and rented it. So I went back to Task and told them found me a place to live, and I was going to be moving out. And the lady there was the supervisor. My caseworker wasn't there. And she just said, well, you need to talk to your caseworker on that. So I was, okay, no problem. I'll come back in and see her. I go to the halfway house, and I'm loading my stuff up. I'm leaving. Marvin comes up, the guy that owns the house. He goes, Eddie, what are you doing? I said, well, Marvin, I rented a place down on the Warrior River. I'm moving down there. And he's like, wait a minute, Eddie. Hold off a minute. Hold on. He calls this lady up. He's talking to her. Next thing he goes, this lady wants to talk to you. She says, Mr. Gladfelder, you can't leave that house. That man's on your bond. You cannot leave that house. I was like, well, I was just up there. You didn't tell me. She said, listen, I'll send the police out there to get you right now. You can go back to jail. If you leave that house, you're going to jail. Now, I'd already loaded all my stuff in the truck. I had to go out there and start carrying it back in. All the guys I'd already went, holla, see y'all later. Now I'm having to bring it all in, humiliation one more time. Well, I know today that was God, my God, doing for me what that I wouldn't do for myself. Because this was I'd been there about 3 weeks. I was in jail a little over a month. So this is going on in April. So it's getting closer to May. So I'm fixing to move into this fish camp right when summer's hitting. It would have just been more and more failed attempt. But what ended up happening is I ended up staying there another 2.5 months. And during that time, I ended up asking Marvin to be my sponsor. Marvin, he started right away taking me through the steps. He didn't hesitate. And we got to working with the steps and going through them. And, it was strange in the beginning because he had me writing down everything I got mad at every day. And there was pages. I mean, I got mad several times. People driving on the road, the girl at Burger King leaving my fries out of the bag. I mean, it's just ridiculous somebody to leave my fries out of the bag. And then Marvin would take me to IHOP and we'd sit down and I'd go over my list. Now, I'll never forget the first time I went over my list. So I'm telling him about people cutting me off, and he looks at me and goes, well, Eddie, now you're mad about this. What's your part in this? My part in this? They cut me off. Yeah, well, you're mad about it, so what's your part in it? I mean, this made no sense to me. Has this guy lost his friggin' mind? And then he started explaining to me, you don't own that freeway, Eddie. Those people, they pay taxes. They own that. They have the right to drive on that freeway too. And you're trying to control how they drive. Why don't you just worry about how you drive? And then you wouldn't have to be mad at them. And that girl at Burger King that you're mad at, that little girl's in there making minimum wage, trying to serve food with a line out there, and you're mad at her because she left something out. He says, come on, man, cut people some slack. Because, see, I didn't cut anybody any slack. I was always finding something wrong with somebody. Everybody was always screwing up. Then I started reading in the book. It talks about the director. The actor that wanted to direct the whole show. I could relate to that. That was me. And I could get the lights, the ballot, everything, but somehow the show never came off the way I wanted it to. And I was always disturbed about something. That's what working the steps did for me. It went on through it and taught me all of that stuff. The first part of it, I knew I was whooped. So step one, was pretty well, embedded to me, and Marvin told me, to my deep, most innermost self, I had to realize that it wasn't, I love when my sponsor, Mike, tells the story about his dad, talking about the train. They tell him the first one's the one that is the first one's the one that messes you up, gets you drunk. And I mean, when I would hear that, I was like, man, these people don't drink like I do. First drink never got me drunk, But I love the way he explains it, because he says his dad told him, it's not the engine that it's not the caboose that kills you, it's the engine. Because I always thought that it was the last drink that messed me up. I just drank too much. If I would just quit a little bit sooner, I wouldn't get so drunk. And then I wouldn't be in trouble. I wouldn't black out every time. I wouldn't wake up with people telling me all kinds of crazy stuff that I did. And I really didn't know if I did or not. Sometimes I think they made it up, but anyway, because it sounded a little ridiculous to me. But anyway, And Mike explains that, how that, his dad taught him it's the engine that kills you, you know. And so I started being able to relate that and drink it. So the first step, I had that, I know to my innermost self today that I still got a drink left in me. And I know if I take that drink, I don't know where to go, because I know me. I mean, I may start off thinking I can control it, and I may start off and do okay for, who knows, a week or two, a month, whatever. But there's going to come a time that the wheels are going to come off. I know that from my experience. And today, after this program and working the steps and having a higher power of my own understanding and a relationship with this God, I don't want to change how I feel. And that's a miracle for an alcoholic like me. I promise you that. I always wanted to change how I felt. I always wanted to feel a little bit better. And, so that's what the program's given me so far. So that's pretty much, what I was like, and that's what happened. Today I continue to work these steps. Now, of course, step 2 was a little difficult for me. I believe that I could be restored to sanity. It was a few months down the road when I realized that sanity had been restored, because I realized that it had been like a month or half or 2 months, and I hadn't even thought about having a drink. I hadn't even thought about partying. My mind was on going to meetings and my new friends and stuff in recovery. I found a fellowship, and it started growing up around me because I made myself involved. I started helping in the meetings. I started becoming part of the meeting. I started making new friends in recovery that wanted to be sober. I didn't hang out with those guys that were on the edge, that was chasing after women and doing this and doing that. I knew that was the wrong way for me to go. I just knew it. I know me. I get going out there doing all this, I'll be drunk. It's no doubt. So I didn't do that in the beginning. I was trying to go through doing this deal, and I stayed focused on that. As far as the God thing, I had prejudice about religion. That was piecemeal for me, because when I got here, it wasn't that I didn't believe in God. It's just that, I had some bad feelings, and also the way I had been living for a long time, I knew that I just didn't feel like God wanted anything to do with me. By the time I got here, I was absolutely behind the gates of hell. When I was in jail, the gates of hell had slammed behind me. I had no life in my eyes. I weighed about 165 pounds. I was dying. I was literally dying. And, so I just didn't think that God really wanted anything to do with me much. Well, I like over here, it says that actually says we have been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world. People who rose above their problems. They said God made these things possible, and we only smiled. We had seen spiritual release, but liked to tell ourselves it wasn't true. Actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down inside every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God. And, I love the way that the book talks about that, the God I'm talking about, don't let it interfere with you, because you choose your own God, your own conception of God. And, with me, what happened is I started out praying to the creator of the butterfly. Whatever created a butterfly, I never seen a human being be able to create a butterfly. So whoever created the butterfly, that's, I'm sorry, I thought somebody was trying to get my attention here. But anyway, whoever created the butterfly, which no man's ever been able to do that. So that's who I was praying to. And it grew from there. finally my childhood conception came about. And today I've built through the third step, learning to turn my life and will over to the care of God on a daily basis. I've built a relationship now. And I know that that power can do things that I can't do. You know, the step 4 thing, I was a little weird on that. And I'll tell you why. It's because I had skeletons in my closet, y'all. I had things that I was glad to get off my shoulders. And when they told me that I could write this stuff down and get a release, I wanted that. And I got to write. My sponsor at the time, I moved out of the recovery house, and Marvin had taken me through the steps in a different fellowship. And when I moved out of the recovery house, I got a new sponsor, and he took me back through the big book. We had to start all over, and we went through it quickly. Both of my sponsors took me through the steps right away. Marvin took me through the steps in the other fellowship. Now I know at unbelievable rate, because in 2.5 months we had went through all the steps. And then this other sponsor took me back through the big book, and we worked the steps in another 2.5 months. So within less than 6 months, I was full circle and was sponsoring guys. So anyway, this 4th step though, I really wanted that, and I started writing. I mean, man, I took off writing. I had everything written out within like 1 week, and you know, I always love what Clancy used to say. He used to say, you know, write down what's eating your lunch. You know, the kid that stole your lunch money, you know, we're not worried about that right now. We can do that, like, what's eating your lunch? What place, person, or thing has just got you going that you can't get rid of? Let's get that on paper. And that's what we did. We went to work, and we got through those things. We got to the root cause of what was going on with me, with my irritability and my restlessness and all of that. We got it on paper, and we got my skeletons out of my closet. We wrote them down, things that I wasn't ever going to tell anyone. Now, my sponsor that I ended up getting when I got out of the recovery house, when I got my 4th step all down, he was sick. And there was this pastor that had helped me since I'd gotten out of jail. And I went to him, because a pastor can't tell people what you're going to tell them. And I had some things on there I really didn't want everybody in recovery knowing about. So I ended up going to him. And y'all, when I did this 4th step, it was like I just threw up all the stuff inside of me that was horrible. I cried like a baby. You know, some people talk about they felt like it was just a wonderful thing when they're done. When I was done, I felt like I'd been 15 rounds with Muhammad Ali, and he had just beat the heck out of me. I felt like ground up hamburger meat. But I got it all out. And I told this pastor everything, not holding on to nothing. And so my sponsor, he told me, go home and read the book, read the first 5 steps, first 5 proposals in the book, and pray and thank God from the bottom of your heart for this program. And I did that. And when I started, after I'd prayed, I sat there meditating, I fell asleep. The next morning I woke up, it felt like the whole world had been lifted off my shoulders. It was an amazing thing, y'all. And, you know, so after that, it's like things just, it felt different. I mean, you know, I just felt different for a change. I really, it was a very spiritual awakening that had happened to me. And, you know, as far as, then we got working on step 6 and 7. We looked at my character defects, and I had plenty of them. And I still work on those today. I don't think that we ever stop working on 6 and 7. The guys I work with, we're always talking about looking at 6 and 7. You know, my character defects, because today I want to be the best Eddie that I can possibly be. I want to look at me on a regular basis and see what's going on with me. And when anything's disturbing me, I look at me. What is it about me? What's going on with me? And that's the only way that I can get better. And that's what I want to do, is get better. Step 7, this relationship that I made with this God, I've learned how to rely on God. You know, Tim taught me, my second sponsor, he taught me he said, look, Eddie, he says, reliance on God means this, humbly asking God to remove my shortcomings. My shortcomings, when that power bill's due, am I gonna go nuts trying to figure out what I got to do to pay it and just go ballistic and try to arrange life to suit myself? Or am I going to know that God's not going to drop me on my butt? He told me, Eddie, as long as you do the right things, God will always provide a roof over your head and something to eat. Anything else you get above that is all just gifts. It's bonuses. And man, that's gave me a great outlook on life. I have a roof over my head and something to eat. Everything else, I just got gratitude. It makes me grateful because I have such an abundant life today. It's amazing everything I have. I can't even believe it. And I don't have a whole lot, but it's a lot to me. And, then we got into my amends. Now, one thing about that, trusting God and having faith, everything. Oh, Percy, he died this year. But Percy, this old man up in Birmingham where I got sober, he used to say, look, you can have faith in God. And you can be locked in a closet. And if you're locked in that closet, or if you're in that closet, lock yourself in that closet. And you sitting there waiting on God to stick a peanut butter and jelly sandwich through the keyhole, he says, you're probably going to starve to death. He says, at some point, you need to open that door and go out and do something. What his point was is that we got to bring the shovel. God will answer all my needs, but I have to get out and go and try to do something, try to work toward it. I got to bring the shovel. He'll move the mountains. And so then we got into my amends, and I listed all the things I had, and of course other things ended up coming up. But the two biggest ones I had was my ex-wife, my son's mother. And I'm going to tell you right now, that was one I really just didn't want to do, because I was taught, when you make the amends, there's not an I'm sorry in there. It's, look, when I was married to you, I was a liar. I was a cheater. I was not a good husband. I was a horrible husband. What can I do to make that right? And you see, that was the part that got me. I did not want to say that to that woman. We had been divorced for over 20 some odd years, and she had not even liked me. And I mean, even though I was a decent father, I stayed in touch with my son. I paid my child support, all that. But I was not a good husband. I thought I was. Hear me tell it before I got in recovery. Oh, I was an awesome guy. I provided for them. They had a roof over their head. All this. But I didn't ever, take into consideration. I'd go out and hang out at the bar all night. Chase women. I was a sorry piece of junk for a husband. I really was. And, this program got me to look at that. And when I did, I was so ashamed. I was embarrassed of the man that I was. And that's why that fifth step helped me so much. So I made amends to Delon. I told her that. And, when I told her, what can I do to make it right? She said, well, Eddie, I'm just so glad that you're doing something, that you've changed your life. She says, is there anything you need? Do you need any money? Do you need anything? And I was like, no, Delon, that's not what this is about. I just want to try to right my wrongs. It's part of me staying sober, and that's what I need to do. And she said, no, Eddie, all you got to do, just keep doing what you're doing. I'm so proud for you. And when she got ready to hang up the phone, she says, you take care of yourself, and if you need anything, let me know. I love you. Oh, my God. I started crying like a baby. And I called up another friend of mine that was going through some difficult things with 2 children and a wife and, restraining order and everything else. And I shared to him what just happened when I made this amends. And he started crying. And he was like, Eddie, you don't know how bad I needed to hear that. And I don't know why I called him, y'all. God just put it on my heart to call him. It was the most amazing thing. And he needed that so bad. And I needed to share it. For some reason, I had to share with somebody what just happened. And my second biggest amends was my old business partner. The last run I made, I went through about $37,000 of our company money. And so when I got in recovery, I called him and told him what had happened to the money, and that I was going to, I wanted to make amends for it. I was wrong, and I wanted to make it right. And he told me, Eddie, you just take care of yourself. Just do what you need to do, and don't worry about the money. And my sponsor at the time, Tim, he taught me, he says, look, don't take no freebies. He says, if somebody tells you that you owe the money, do the right thing, pay the money. And I did. I started working. It took me over 10 years to pay that money back. But I ended up getting to pay it back. Well, it's so amazing how God works. Because this man, about 4 years ago, we'd always stayed in touch. And this man, about 4 years ago, he had Parkinson's. And he had a really bad thing going on. This caretaker he had, and his son had ripped him off for all of his money. And he lost his house in a foreclosure. And it was just horrible. And I ended up bringing him up, and he stayed with my son. And now I bought a place, and he lives with me. And it's just me. I'm married. So I take care of him. He's 87 years old, and he has Parkinson's. And God has gave me that gift that I get to continue making this amends to this man that helped me so much in my life. And I get to be here and take care of him. This is the most amazing gift, 10, 11. Look, I teach my guys, I do the same thing every morning. This is the biggest thing that's helped me in my recovery, is I read 86 through 88 every single morning. It's one of the first things. I get up and go turn my coffee on. I come back. I read 86 through 88, and I read it. Even though I memorized it, I've been doing this now for a long time. I was told to do it at the very beginning, and I did it. I did it for a few months. Then I got to reading Data Reflections and this and that and the other, and I quit reading it. About a month after I quit reading it, I started coming unhinged. My sponsor asked me, when's the last time you read 86 or 88? I said, well, I read it for a long time. Man, I got other things I'm reading now. He said, look at it. It says on awakening. The big book is clear-cut instructions, and it says on awakening. It doesn't say on awakening for the first 5 years. It doesn't say on awakening for the first 3 months. It says on awakening. So now I'm happy to report that a little over 13 years I've been reading that, and it is probably the most valuable thing that I read out of that big book. And I read it every single day. It gets my day set. It gets me going. It's got prayers in it, everything else. I read that, then I pray, and I meditate, and all of that takes 15 minutes, and my day is set. I have a great day, it seems like. But I can skip doing that for a while, and it seems to go other ways. So I teach all the guys that I work with to do this on a regular basis, and I'm happy to report the ones that do it tell me that it really makes a change in their life. I know it's made a change in mine. 86 through 88, upon awakening, clear-cut instructions. And, at night, today, I have a conscience. I try to do little spot inventories during the day. If I start getting, out of bounds, or if I feel like I've said something or offended somebody, I try to catch it right away. And that way I don't have to wait to make amends. I go ahead and make amends right then. And, but I know something's not right. And as far as 11, I continuously grow in my conscious contact with God as I understand Him. Praying only for knowledge of His will for me and the power to carry it out. I do that on a daily basis. Carrying the message. I take guys through the steps right out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We work the steps, we read the book together, and we only make one agreement when we do it. And that's it. When I get through taking you through the book, that you'll be there waiting to take other people through the book. Bill Wilson used to say, pass it on. And that's my biggest thing, is when we go through this book, right out of this book, is that you take and you sit down with another guy. Because I'm going to tell you, a fellowship has grown up about me. And the bright spot of my life today is when I work with newcomers and I hang out with other people in the fellowship. It's the most greatest life I could have ever imagined. And there's no better high in the world, no better drunk, no better anything than when you're sitting down with a guy across from you and you're working with him and you get to see the lights come on. you're working the steps, and you guys that sponsor, you know what I mean. There is no better feeling than when you start watching that guy recover. You know, you hear all the time that we're a miracle. We're a miracle. And that's great. But the best miracle that I think that God gives us is that we actually get to watch other people's miracles. We get to be part of their miracles. There's no bigger blessing that I know that I could ever have. I really am blessed tonight to be able to be in Prescott, Arizona. I've been out there to visit my sponsor. He lives there. I love Prescott. And I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to share my story. May God bless all of you.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Eddie, so much. I'm going to stop recording.